I'm recording this after the completion of the video that follows next. I'd just like to do a quick plug for Project Healing Waters, for whom this fly was tied. The base is made of solid cherry and was done by my good friend Dick Shaw of Dublin, Ohio. And I think it's a nice piece when taken as a whole. And I hope you'll consider bidding on it and other wonderful items that are part of the silent auction for Project Healing Waters. Hello. Welcome to Delaware, Ohio, where the current humidity is approximately 200% in this fly tying room. Yeah, it's a little sweaty here. Diane from Project Healing Waters has contacted me, and they would like another full dress salmon fly or something this year for their silent auction. And I've decided to do a fly I've done a couple times in the past. It's called Fra Diavolo, or Fra Diavolo to you and me. I want to show you a couple of versions that I've done previously. One very old one, back when I knew little to nothing about tying these, and one that's I feel is an improvement, at least certainly proportionally over that one. And it's just to give an idea of some of the pitfalls with these flies. Here's one I did a long time ago. And, you know, it's, to the uninitiated, it's impressive. But to the initiated, it's a disaster. The problem is, it's got a big wing, and a big wing is always great. But the big wing is way out of proportion to the hook. In addition, the tag extends from the very back of the barb to the tip of the barb on this one, which is the way I used to do them. But it can result in a tag that's just too long. If you look at a bunch of the old flies, you know, old renderings of the flies, the tags were typically shorter. They weren't as long as I've got it here. Also, the tag is a little out of proportion with the hook. It's as long as the first section, which is supposed to be a third of the length. So, not in love with it. Now there are nice aspects to this fly as well, and I always try to find the good. You know, I like the way the body starts narrow and gets wide towards the front. And I like the way the yellow hackle meets up with the blue hackle, light blue hackle. And, you know, it could be a lot worse, I'm sure. Now let me show you a later one, back when I knew a little bit more. This is a better proportioned wing to begin with. Now, the tag still extends from the back of the barb to the front of the barb. But this is a different hook. The barb on this hook is much smaller proportionally with the rest of the hook. And this tag includes the butt as well. So the tag is then by definition shorter. I like I used silk on this one that I like very much. The Indian crow on this is again, it's a sub. It's not real Indian crow, but it's closer to Indian crow than the one on the previous fly. So there you go. I'm going to do another version, and I'm going to try to incorporate aspects that I like from both flies. So we'll see how this pans out. All right, as you can see, I've got the eye tied in, the gut eye, and I tied that in with black Beneki 12-aught thread. You can use any black thread, that's fine. And then I've decided on this fly to make the body and also tie in all the materials with 100 denier, in this case, Vivus GSP thread. I spoke with John McLean recently, and he is of the opinion that many tyers, and I would be certainly among that group, tie in their materials with too fine a thread. And he is an advocate of using a wider thread to get better coverage when you tie things in, make everything more secure. I don't know. The jury's still out with me, but it's a lot simpler for me to just use 100 denier throughout than starting with 200 denier and then switching to 50, etc., as I've always done. So we'll give this a shot. I'm gonna tie in some fine oval tinsel, and I've stripped off the metal from the tip here, and that's just to cut down on bulk. But when I tie it in, I want to get a couple of strands of the metal. I want to be sure to get a little bit of the metal when I tie it in. If I don't do that, the metal can separate from the core as I wind it. And I'm going to do 8 turns just to secure it real well, 8 turns forward. And then I'm going to just wind a 4-turn tip, if you will. And I'm checking this on my big monitor, and it's pretty good. Let me go back here just a little bit. I want to try to leave no spaces. There's a little bit of a space there. All right. Now, I'll unwind this back. And that's just to cut down on thread bulk. And I'm going to bind this down forward, always underneath the hook. To a spot just short of the tip of the barb. And by the way, I started this, actually, it won't look like this on the video, but where I started this was, because this is a relatively small barb on this particular hook, I started it just back of this. I started it about halfway between the tip of the barb and the crook here, right about in there. So my entire tag, including most of the butt, will extend from here to here. And I think that's going to be about right. And, you know, I've still got this space here that I don't like. Let's see how that goes. Now, I'm gonna cut this here. The butt will tend to cover quite a bit. So I'm not going to worry too much about that. And right now I'm going to tie in a piece of floss. Again, on the far, I like to tie things in on the far side of the hook. The reason for that is that then when the winds always start on the bottom, and it's just a nicety. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, because it's GSP. If it was a regular thread, I would do 5. And I absolutely count every last freaking turn of everything on a full dress fly. So I wound that backwards and then forwards. And I wound it in such a way I overwrapped more towards the front than I did towards the back, which gives me a taper, which I want. I'm really taking my time with this one because it's for a charity auction, and you want to put your best foot forward, do a good job for whoever winds up buying this fly. All right. There we go with the tag. Let's take stock. It's pretty good. I'm going to smooth it out off camera with the burnishing tool. And the next stage will be the butt. And of course, what I just told you is incorrect. The tail goes on next, not the butt. Anyway, we'll get it together here, I'm sure, at some point. I've measured this. This tail, this crest is about 24 millimeters from right here to the tip, measured diagonally. That's 1.5 times the measurement from here to here. So it's 1.5 times the gap. It's just a good rule of thumb. Now I notice when I hold this up here, it's a little bit too upright. I want it upright to some degree, but this is a little too much. First thing I'm going to do to prep this, I like to flatten the stem, and while I'm doing that, just have a look at this thing and see if I think it's going to be suitable. And I think it should work. Don't know. I'm going to crimp this with my thumb right there. And then I'm going to hold this, and I'm going to crimp the back of the stem, the first third or so, to flatten it out just a little bit. In other words, to take some of the curve out of it. Now I'm going to tie it in just with a couple of loose turns. Then I'm going to pull some of this root through. I'm gonna need more turns than this. The 2 turns aren't doing it. Let me do a third. I want this dead straight. That looks pretty good. I'm going to try pulling just a little more of the root through. Oops. There. And now check it again. You can't spend too much time on this. Just so you know too, I am waxing thread between every stage. All right, that should work. I'm going to check it one more time from the top. I think that's pretty good. Now this fly has 2 toppings. You could use 2 tails if you want. I know Davy McPhail likes to do that. And who's going to argue with Davy McPhail? Not me. I think we're ready for the butt now. And I've prepared a piece of ostrich herl. And I want to tie this in. I'm going to use the right angle technique. And I want what I call the flues. I don't know, barbules, whatever you choose to call these. The fluffy stuff to angle up towards me when I tie it in. That way, once I start winding it, and I want to get it, I definitely want this underneath. Once I start winding it, I want the stem to lead. Let's see if that's going to work out. Well, you know what? I need to stick this through just a little bit more. About 6 turns there. Now let's see how this looks once we get it wound. 3, 4. I like 5 turns on a butt. You know what? I could maybe go with one more. It'll tend to separate as you do more turns, so you have to be aware of that. Back off a little bit. I catch it underneath. And try not to pull forward too much. It's easy to yank this forward and you lose the compactness of your butt. I'm going to double check the tail, make sure I haven't messed it up. Cut this at an angle. Now you can see there's a little bit of a cliff right here because of the stem of the tail. I could have cut that off short. so it didn't extend out into the body. But I like to make the tail as secure as I can make it. So I didn't do that. What I'll do is off camera, I'll fill this in with white thread, and that will, as well, it'll beef up the body a little bit more. So off camera, I'm going to do that, and our next stage will be the first part of the body, which is extends a third of the hook shank. Be right back. Next, I'm going to tie in the first section of ribbing on the fly. And the recipe calls for fine silver tinsel. This is small silver tinsel. Sue me for using the small rather than the fine. It's not that I don't have fine, but I like it to go fine, small, and then medium on the next section. And that just suits my idea of the order of the universe. I don't have a good reason for doing that other than I like to do it that way. And I'm going to bind this down. I want to make sure I've caught some of the metal, which I have. I'm going to bind this down forward to about the 1/3 point on the shank. Or the 1/3 point on the body would be a better way of saying it, more accurate way of saying it. So let's go forward here to what I think is 1/3, and then I'm going to measure it to be sure. Yeah, it looks like 1/3. All right. The body is about 3, and I want the thread stationed right at 1. And I'm a little short. A couple more. Measure again. Yep. This is Lagarton Red Claret floss, which looks red-orange to me. Tying this floss in on the far side of the hook. 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I just want to make sure it's not going to slip. And I always stroke it a number of times before I start winding, trying to flatten it out, trying to get any pilling and imperfections out of it, any short fibers out of it, and I'll start winding back. The first going back, I'm pretty much edge to edge, not overlapping very much. And going forward, what I'm going to do, I want to be sure I get this right up against this. What I'm going to do going forward is start out more or less edge to edge. Oops. Already, I don't like a couple things here. You may have to twist it a little bit from time to time. And as I go forward, I'm going to overlap more and more to try to get a taper going. Oh boy. I lost it there. Getting a little short. Could have used just a bit more of this. No, I don't like it. I want it to taper, but I want it to be smooth. I don't want a big lump at the front. We'll go with this. 1, 2, 3, 5, 6. Remember how I went 8 forward? Now I went 7 back. Bind this down underneath the hook. 2, 3, 4. I'm going to go 5 turns and then trim this. And then take a 6th. And I missed a little bit of it. Come on. Take a 6th. Flatten the thread and go back. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now I'm going to burnish this. All burnishing does really is kind of put a shine on it. The idea that you can get rid of major imperfections is with burnishing is a fallacy. In fact, most of the time I don't burnish anything. Now I'm going to go for 4 turns on this. Let's see if I can make this work out. Almost. I'm going to make these just a touch more upright. That's what I want. Now I'm going 5 forward, trimming it. Do a 6th. This is where my butt's going to be, or my joint. It's like a butt, only it's more in the middle. They call it a joint when it moves up in the fly. Some flies will actually have 2 joints. This one just has the 1. Okay, I think that first section's looking pretty good. Body veilings are next. All right, next we're going to put on the Indian crow. Body veiling. And that looked easy, but I did a lot of prep beforehand to make that one work out. And we'll do the bottom Indian crow next. All right, now we're going to do the tie in the bottom Indian crow. If you notice, that top veiling was 4 turns forward, and the bottom I did 4 turns back. And I think that's going to work. Next, we'll do the joint, the middle joint. And here we go with the joint. I'm going to hold this with 5 turns forward, then cut the butt, and then do a 6th turn to cover the butt, like so. Really want to try to get these fibers close together, wind them very close together. And when I capture this underneath, I don't want to yank it forward, which is pretty easy to do. Okay, I've got that bound down under the hook pretty well. I'm going to trim it, and then I'll wind all the way forward and all the way back. I'll do that off camera. I'm going to start this next section by tying in a piece of hackle and just tying it in with 1 turn. Follow that up with medium silver tinsel. Tie that in on the far side of the hook. Again, just 1 turn to hold it in place. And finally, again on the far side of the hook, two strands of Danville light blue floss. Another way to do this is tie in a single strand of floss at the very front, and then take that floss all the way back to the joint and then all the way forward again. And I'm going to bind all this down underneath the hook, carefully winding forward. I want to keep this thread flat as I wind. Looks like it's about as flat as it's going to get. Trying to keep everything underneath the hook here. At this point, I'm going to take another set of turns back and forward with the thread to try to smooth everything out, and I'm going to burnish it well. And I'll do that off camera, and I'll be right back. I'm going to start by winding the floss, and before I do that, I like to stroke it to get out any extraneous fibers, to flatten it well. I'm just going to wind this forward, overlapping slightly, stroking it the entire time. Not trying to set any speed records here, just trying to keep the floss together. Letting it slide between my fingers as I wrap. Doing a little burnishing. This really doesn't get rid of imperfections. It just adds a little bit of shine. I'm doing this lightly. I'm not using a lot of pressure there. All right, the next thing we want to do is wind the ribbing. Trying to keep the hackle out of the way. Not always easy to do. I'm going to try for 5 turns of ribbing. See how this goes. I want them evenly spaced. And if it looks like it's going to work out, I use a lot of pressure. And I think this will work out. And I like to tie off the ribbing on the side of the hook. Just trap it a couple of times. Now this hackle is going to follow right behind the ribbing. And notice I didn't start this hackle at the second turn as you would have if this were just if this body was just one section. You'd start this hackle right behind the second turn. But in this case, because it's just one section, we start the ribbing behind the very first turn. We stroke it back as we wind. And this is a delicate process because this hackle stem is quite fragile. twisting this hackle slightly as I wind it to keep the strands angled back. I want to try to leave no space between the stem and the ribbing. We want to leave just enough room up front for the throat. I think this is going to do it. You notice even though it tends to get in the way, I did not cut the ribbing right away. I'm going to cut it now. Reason I didn't cut it right away is if the hackle stem breaks, I don't have to absolutely redo everything. I'll still have a piece of ribbing I can reuse. If I'd cut it, I wouldn't have been able to reuse it if the hackle stem broke. Now at this point, I'm going to pull everything down to the sides like so, and I'll do that off camera because it's a little bit tedious and time consuming. The next thing to go on is the white-tipped turkey underwing. And because I want a humped wing on this, I'm going to hump the underwing as well ahead of time, like so. Bottom line, what I'm doing is I'm holding it in the middle and stroking down each side like so, and that's overdone there. But I really want to keep this underwing low. I want to make sure that this is really straddling the hook on both sides. Just a touch. It's very easy to get this turkey all on one side after you've mounted it. See that? That's not really where I want it. It's always the far one that's an issue. And you just keep playing with it till you get it right. But make sure it's right, because this underwing is important, and I'm still not where I want to be there. Just not getting over there. I don't need to show you all this really, but this is what you need to go through to get this underwing sitting properly. It's critical, and I'm starting to like it. There, it's low. It's not really kicked up. I think that'll work. Next to go on is the throat. And it's supposed to be Macaw, but I don't have suitable Macaw. So I'm using a darker yellow hackle for this. And I started it one turn in front of the underwing. And that's because when I wind it, I don't want to get into the underwing, and that just gives me a little cushion. All in an effort to not screw up what I've already done. And to be honest, that's kind of the name of the game with these flies. Not screwing up what has gone before is huge. And it's so easy to do. Now, I'm gonna pull this down off camera, and I'm also gonna switch to black thread, and I'll be right back. Got a pair of wings that I've married up here. And they're pretty big. And I want to be sure with these that I'm straddling the hook on both sides. Yeah, I think that's going to work. Really get it bound down. Yeah, I'll straighten that up a little bit off camera and we'll get on to the next stage. All right, now for the wood duck. I'm going to mount it low, but as usual, high on the head. I would like a little more hump. Really hard to keep that high enough. All right. Jungle cock is next. All right, next are the jungle cock sides. And you can see I've prepared this stem by cutting it closely rather than stripping it. You can always adjust these things after the fact. By manipulating their stems. All right. Cheeks are next. All right, these are some chatterer subs I've made. Just so you know, I redid the wood duck sides and the jungle cock sides. The far side was just too long, and I shortened it up a little bit. I reused the original materials. Would have loved to have used real chatterer. But I'm afraid the subs are going to have to do. And that should work. Two toppings are next. All right, here's the first topping. Single millimeter can make all the difference in the world on these toppings. All right. I'll straighten that up a bit, and I think it'll work. And here we go with the second topping. It's got a little something in it. Mm. Third time's a charm. All right. All right, I've glued everything up just to keep it intact. And I'm going to do horns next. This is the last stage. And the horns, I want this tip to be about even with that. I'll get that one adjusted. But on the other side, that. Let me play with that a little bit off camera. It's a little bit, the far one is a little bit low right now on the head. I'll be right back. All right, I've got these horns where I want them, and I'm going to trim everything up, trim all these butt ends off, and it'll take me quite a while to do that. You can't go slow enough on that process. And then I'll straighten it all up and we'll have a look. After trimming everything, I work the thread all the way down to the bottom and then back up. And before going back up, I glued the thread up. Did my whip finish up here. I could have done it down here, but I didn't have the best coverage at that point in time. And next I'll glue the head up and then we'll take a look at the finished product. Here's the fly after some priming coats with Griff's Thin, which I still have a little bit left. It's not made anymore, but anything that can fill well. And then a couple coats of Sally Hansen's. And then here's with a third coat of Sally Hansen's. A better way to do this is with a coat of black Sally Hansen's and then a clear coats. However, with a yellow throat, you just don't want to chance it. It'll bleed right into the throat. Hope you enjoyed this. I know it was a long slog. It was for me too.